You see Sidney Harris in the, at least you see his picture in the Herald every morning with his column, and he has always struck me as a man with an opinion and an observation on almost everything. So I thought tonight we'd let you hear from his own lips some of his pearls of, not necessarily wisdom, but at least observations. Welcome to Montage.
I've got more oysters than I have pearls.
Okay. First of all, you do run a tremendous gamut of ideas and thinking. Do you read all the time? How do you amass?
Yes, I read omnivorously. I do a great deal of reading, surely. One has to.
Sure.
You have to take in order to give out.
Yeah.
I run a gamut because that's what I wanted to do when I started the column. When Jack Knight called me in 33 years ago and asked me what sort of column I wanted to do, I said I wanted to write one that dealt with the widest variety of subjects and then let me sleep until 11 o'clock in the morning. Those were my only criteria.
What were you doing at that time, though?
I was a reporter and feature writer, and I was also the drama critic for the Chicago Daily News.
Where are you from? In Chicago, you home?
Well, I'm a poor immigrant boy from the old country, actually, but we came here when I was about 7. And I've lived in Chicago ever since, yes.
What country?
London. I was born in England.
Well, what kinds of reactions do you get from people? First of all, do you get a lot of mail from readers?
Oh, yes. I get a few hundred letters a week,
yeah.
Sure.
What's the general, they want to ask questions or raising hell with you or what?
Everything. Kissing the hem of my gown, wishing I were dead, calling me all kinds of names, asking for information, sending manuscripts. Oh, just the widest variety of things you can imagine.
Do you ever respond?
Oh, I answer every letter I get,
yeah.
or my secretary does.
Yeah.
Some I don't have to answer. They just are stereotyped answers, of course.
Yeah.
You know, somebody, dear sir, you occur letter, I just say, thank you for giving me your opinion.
How have you changed in the last 33 years writing your column? We talked about attitudes changing in 10 years.
I've changed the way everybody's changed. I've become wiser and sadder and poorer. And
Pay more time.
You know, somebody once said that life is what happens to you while you're making other plans.
Absolutely.
You know, and life has happened to me while I made other plans. I've changed my views about children because I had to. When my children were young, I had some quite different views. You know,
didn't quite work out that way.
No.
Yeah. Well, it's like FPA said, nothing more responsible for the good old days than a bad memory.
That's right. But I think the column is less flip than it was, less cocksure than it was. I think it's more thoughtful. I hope it isn't any duller. But we do get stupider as we get older on the whole. Many of us too. I think I do too. I think when we're 18, we're probably our sharpest in terms of sensitivity, intuition, and a sense of human values. And we build up a kind of an armoring over the years to prevent hurt and disillusion from setting in. And we settle into ourselves, as it were. We get kind of dumber, really.
But yet, on the other hand, young people seem to be inherently more conservative to change than older people.
Really? Have you found that?
I think so.
Really?
I find older people much more willing to say, well, maybe that's a new idea. Let's try it and see what happens.
That has not been my general experience,
No?
but no, it has not been. I find that very few people past 40 have changed their minds about anything they consider basic.
I guess,
them.
well, let me clarify. I'm talking about over 65. There's a
well,
free
maybe,
spirit
maybe
feeling
when
that,
they're preparing to die, they decide that, well, I really didn't know as much as I thought. But I think in the years when they're in power, you know, between 35 and 60 or 65, when they're movers and shakers, I think they become, on the whole, very rigid.
I agree, but I think that relates to their powers, their positions of power,
That's right.
rather than their numerical
You see, it's
age.
very easy to be tolerant when you've relinquished the reins.
Yes, that's right.
So that's an emotional luxury we can all afford.
That's right.
But I wish they'd do it a little earlier.
Another observation we'd love to hear you make, American medicine, doctors.
Well, I think they represent the most uneducated segment of our population.
Well, go on.
Well, how much further can I go?
Well, we've got all the doctors' attention now. Tell them what you mean.
Well, I don't know if you've met many European doctors.
No, I haven't.
They're educated people. They get a complete education. A doctor here gets a technical medical education. He knows nothing else but medicine. But the time he practices, he's so busy that all he can read are journals. And in fact, his most important journal is usually the Wall Street Journal. And he can hardly keep up with his own profession. If doctors were intelligent, they wouldn't have tolerated the AMA for so many years, so many decades, you know. And AMA has been a travesty of a trade union. And it's been wrong on almost everything. It's been it's retreated year by year from its previous. I remember when the AMA was condemning Blue Cross as being socialistic. Group medicine is socialistic. If we ever have socialized medicine in this country, it will be the fault of the American Medical Association.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And the great bulk of doctors have supported it, mostly out of apathy, really, because they are uneducated people. They know nothing about health systems. They know nothing about sociological conditions. All they know is the pharynx and the Isles of Langerhans. Right. And I think it's shocking, and they must get to be educated before they get into medical school.
Now, I must ask you about lawyers. We've had the doctors. Let's talk about the lawyers.
Well, lawyers don't have the capacity to do as much harm as doctors, I think, for one thing.
Yeah.
I think lawyers, on the whole, have a very high respect for law in the abstract and a very low concept of it in the particular.
I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, because I think if you've really studied the law, you realize it is probably the most glorious institution ever devised by man. I mean, it's one of the absolute 2 or 3 things devised by the human creature that transcends him, you see. And I think every lawyer who has really studied the law must know this and feel this, like religion. On the other hand, in the practice, unfortunately, there is an enormous disparity. There's no touching between the two. You know,
it has always been, it is constantly frustrating to me to find it very difficult to engage lawyers in discussions about the philosophy of law.
Oh,
it's almost impossible.
Oh, it's like talking to doctors about the philosophy of health or health
That's
maintenance.
right.
They're interested in disease.
Business. I'll never forget a boy telling me that he didn't want to be a doctor like his father because he didn't like business. And he said it very innocently, and I thought, God, what an indictment.
I know it. I know it.
He was very sincere about it.
Well, you know, a doctor friend of mine from Vienna who came over here said he was shocked the first year he was here. He was walking to the subway with another doctor, an American doctor, who joined him, and the American doctor said, "Well, Doc, how's business?" And he said, "This is unbelievable. I mean, I'm a doctor. I'm not in business. I don't have a business. How's business?" But these are all subsumed in the business.
Now, are we now guilty?
Philosophy of law. You know, Mortimer Adler was one of the few people to teach philosophy of law at the University of Chicago. Right. The philosophers hated him because he dealt with law. The lawyers hated him because he dealt with philosophy. We don't like anything interdisciplinary, right. And that is the thing we need most of all.
Absolutely.
Because if you notice in science where the greatest advances are making, everything is hyphenated.
That's right.
Nothing is singular. It's biochemistry, it's molecular chemistry. They're all hyphenated. But in the humanities and the social sciences, they're all autonomous, and they don't want their little empires disturbed.
Sidney Harris, we thank you very much. We'll be right back.